I never meant for it to happen with my dad. I walked in, and his tool was out. I did not know what to do in this situation, but he reassured me it was okay, what we both wanted. I walked further into the room and closed the door behind me. My hands still trembled as I sat down to write this, not sure where to even begin. The memories flood my senses, making my chest tighten with each heartbeat. I'm Abigail, Abby to my friends. At 23, with long chestnut hair and emerald eyes that people say sparkle like my mother's, I had a life others might envy, successful career in publishing, my own apartment in the city, and what looked like the perfect family from the outside. But everything changed that stormy night when I came home to visit. Mom was away at her sister's, and Dad had been different since the divorce. More intense, more focused on me. The way his eyes would linger made my skin flush. The casual touches that weren't so casual anymore. I'd known something was building between us for months. The electricity when we'd brush past each other. The loaded silences over morning coffee. The way he'd study my face like he was memorizing every detail. Part of me wanted to run, but a deeper, darker part of me craved what was coming. That night, as thunder rattled the windows and rain lashed against the house, we finally crossed a line we could never uncross. His fingers threading through my hair, breath hot against my neck, whispering things that made me shiver. I should feel ashamed. I should feel guilty. But all I feel is an ache for more. Let me talk to you about my upbringing and what led me to love this man as much as I do, and am so proud to call him my dad, even after that night together. Growing up, I always thought I hit the jackpot with my family. My parents were the kind of people you could lean on for anything, guiding, loving, and completely present in our lives. But there was something uniquely special about my relationship with my dad. From a young age, he had this way of making the world seem less intimidating. Whether it was his booming laugh or the way he seemed to know the answer to everything, I admired him endlessly. He taught me how to ride my bike, patiently running beside me until I finally found my balance, and cheered me on when I stumbled through my first piano recital. He was my protector and my cheerleader, always encouraging me to dream big, but reminding me to stay grounded. There's one story I'll never forget. I must have been around 10 when we decided to build a treehouse together in the backyard. It was the middle of summer, and despite the heat, he insisted we do it ourselves. He showed me how to hammer nails, measure wood, and even climb the ladder without fear. We spent weeks on that project, and it wasn't perfect by any stretch. Some of the boards were a little crooked, and the paint job wasn't exactly professional, but it was ours. To this day, it stands as a testament to what we could create together. My dad has always been more than just a father to me. He's been my mentor, my confidant, and my biggest supporter. Over the years, our bond only grew stronger. Even when I became a teenager and life got more complicated, he had this uncanny ability to listen without judgment and offer advice without lecturing. He knew when to push me and when to just sit beside me quietly. What I cherished most about him was how present he always was. No matter how busy he was with work or life, he made time for me and my mom, and you could tell how deeply he loved us. It was in the small moments, our late-night chats about life, the way he always made breakfast on Sunday mornings, and the goofy nicknames he gave me, that I felt just how much he cared. As much as I adored both my parents, I'd be lying if I said my relationship with my dad didn't sometimes create a bit of tension with my mom. It wasn't that she didn't love me, or that she and Dad didn't get along. They did, deeply. But there was an undeniable closeness between Dad and me that she sometimes found hard to share. My mom was the practical one in the family, the one who made sure I did my homework, ate my vegetables, and brushed my teeth before bed. She was the reason I had structure in my life, and for that, I'll always be grateful. But my dad? He was the dreamer, the fun one, the one who let me stay up past my bedtime to watch shooting stars, or who'd drop everything on a Saturday to take me to the park. I remember one particular summer when Dad and I went on a camping trip, just the two of us. Mom wasn't thrilled about it, not because she didn't trust him, but because she felt left out. She said she wasn't much of an outdoorsy person, but looking back, I wonder if it was more than that. I didn't notice it as much then, but there were subtle signs. When we came back with stories of our late-night ghost tales around the fire and a squirrel that stole our snacks, she listened with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Another time, during a rainy weekend, Dad and I decided to bake cookies. It was a mess, flour everywhere, chocolate smudged on our faces, and burnt edges on half the batch. But we laughed through it all. Mom, however, stood at the doorway with her arms crossed, trying to look amused. Later, as she helped clean up the chaos, she sighed and muttered something about how she always ended up on the sidelines. It wasn't just big moments either. There were little things, like how I'd always run to him first when I had exciting news, or how we had our own inside jokes. Once, when I was around 12, Mom got frustrated during dinner because Dad and I were laughing about something silly, and she couldn't follow along. "Must be nice to be part of the club," she said, her voice tinged with annoyance. I didn't understand her frustration at the time. To me, it was just another one of those moments Dad and I shared. Looking back, I realize now how much effort she put into hiding those feelings of jealousy. She never outright said it, but there was an unspoken tension sometimes, especially during my teenage years when Dad and I stayed close, and I drifted from her. She tried to connect with me in her own way, helping me pick out clothes for school dances, or teaching me how to cook. But it was never quite the same. Over the years, I've come to appreciate my mom's perspective more. It couldn't have been easy watching us bond so effortlessly while she worked tirelessly to keep everything running smoothly. She was the backbone of our family, the one who made sure we had the life we did, even if she didn't always get the credit. But the truth is, I loved her just as much. She might not have been the one I built tree houses with or shared ghost stories around a campfire, but she was the one who held us all together. And in her own quiet, steady way, she showed me the kind of strength and resilience I hope to carry with me for the rest of my life. One of the things I loved most about my relationship with Dad was how intentional we were about spending time together. No matter how hectic life got, we always found ways to escape, just the two of us, and create moments that felt like ours alone. It started when I was little. My dad worked long hours, often coming home tired from a day full of meetings and deadlines. But somehow, he always found the energy to make time for me. I'd wait for him by the front door, clutching my favorite book, and the moment he walked in, he'd scoop me up and say, "Let's go on an adventure." Most of the time, the adventure was just a walk around the block or an impromptu storytelling session in the backyard. But to me, it felt like magic. As I got older, our time together evolved. When I was about 9 or 10, we started going on what we called secret breakfasts. On Saturday mornings, while Mom was still asleep, he'd wake me up early, and we'd sneak out of the house to our favorite diner. It was nothing fancy, just pancakes, scrambled eggs, and orange juice. But those mornings felt like our little secret world. We'd talk about everything: my school projects, his childhood, the books I was reading, or the dreams I had about becoming an astronaut or a writer. In middle school, life got busier for both of us. I had after-school clubs, and he had more responsibilities at work, but we still found ways to connect. Sometimes he'd show up unexpectedly at my soccer practices, and after they ended, we'd drive to the nearest ice cream shop for a quick treat. Other times, we'd spend rainy afternoons in the garage, working on his old motorcycle. I didn't know a wrench from a screwdriver, but he was patient. And I loved the feeling of being his helper, even if all I did was hold the flashlight. One of my favorite traditions was our stargazing nights. Dad loved astronomy, and he passed that passion on to me. Whenever there was a meteor shower or a particularly clear night, we'd set up lawn chairs in the backyard and stay out for hours, wrapped in blankets, pointing out constellations. He'd tell me the stories behind each one, weaving mythology and science together in a way that made the stars feel alive. As I became a teenager, I started to understand how much effort it took for him to make time for me. Life got even busier. My world was filled with friends, homework, and high school drama. But Dad never stopped trying. When he noticed that I was stressed, he'd suggest we go for a drive. We'd roll the windows down, play my favorite songs, and just cruise through the quiet back roads. Sometimes we didn't even talk. We'd just enjoy the silence and the open road. There were moments when Mom noticed, of course. She'd tease us about being thick as thieves, or joke that we needed to include her more. But the truth was, these moments with Dad weren't about leaving her out. They were about the bond we shared, something unique that didn't take away from our love for her. We always remembered that night we both shared together, but we never dare mention it anyone or bring it up ever again. We are both ashamed by the experience, but the spark in the moment could not be ignored. Even kisses on the forehead still take me back. It should not be like that, should it? Even as I've grown older, moved out, and started a life of my own, Dad and I still find ways to connect. We have monthly phone calls where we talk for hours about everything under the sun. And whenever I visit home, we pick up right where we left off, whether it's with a shared project, a walk in the park, or just sitting on the porch reminiscing. Even now, as an adult, my dad and I make it a priority to spend time together. Our lives are busier than ever. I have my own career, and Dad's enjoying semi-retirement with projects that keep him occupied. But we always find ways to carve out moments just for the two of us. One of our favorite traditions is our Sunday morning coffee dates. It started a couple of years ago when I moved back closer to home. Every Sunday, without fail, we meet at this cozy little cafe downtown that he discovered years ago. It's tucked away, quiet, and perfect for our long chats. We talk about everything: work, life, books we've read, or podcasts we're into. Sometimes we even bring a chessboard along and play a few rounds, laughing at how terrible we both are. Another thing we love doing together is hiking. Dad's always been a nature enthusiast, and over the years, he's passed that love on to me. About once a month, we plan a hike. Nothing too extreme, but enough to feel like we've escaped the noise of everyday life. There's something special about those long walks, surrounded by trees and fresh air, where we don't have to be anything other than ourselves. It's in those quiet moments, when the world feels still, that we talk about things we might not otherwise share. Last summer, we took on a special project together, building a garden in his backyard. It was something he'd been talking about for ages, and when I suggested we tackle it as a team, his face lit up. Over the course of a few weekends, we turned a patch of overgrown weeds into a beautiful space filled with flowers, herbs, and vegetables. The best part wasn't just seeing it all come together. It was the process. We'd spend hours out there, digging, planting, and joking around like we always have. One of the most meaningful moments we've shared recently was during a road trip we took to visit an old family friend. It was just the two of us, and we decided to take the scenic route. We stopped at small towns, tried local diners, and listened to a mix of my playlists and his favorite classic rock albums. Somewhere along the way, as the sun was setting and the sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, he turned to me and said, "You know, these are the kinds of moments I'll always remember." Even when we're at family gatherings or around other people, Dad and I find little ways to sneak off and just enjoy each other's company. Whether it's a quick walk around the block or slipping into the kitchen to taste test something before it's served, we cherish those stolen moments. It's never about shutting anyone else out. It's about the unique connection we've nurtured over the years. As much as I loved the bond I had with my dad, there were moments when it created tension with my mom. One argument in particular stands out to me, not because it was loud or dramatic, but because it revealed so much about how she was feeling, and it made me see things differently. It happened a few years ago during the holidays. Christmas had always been a big deal in our house, and my mom took pride in making everything perfect. She spent weeks decorating, baking, and planning out every detail. Dad and I, on the other hand, were more about the spontaneous moments, the ones that didn't always fit into her carefully crafted plans. That year, we had this tradition we were excited to continue, building a gingerbread house together. It had started when I was little, and though our creations were usually lopsided and held together with far too much icing, it was something we both looked forward to. Mom wasn't really into it. She'd say it was messy or not her thing. So as usual, Dad and I took over the kitchen one evening, spreading candy and frosting everywhere and laughing at our terrible attempts at architecture. I thought everything was fine, until Mom walked in. She stood there for a moment, watching us, her arms crossed and her expression tight. Then, in a voice that was calm, but unmistakably hurt, she said, "You two always seem to have your little thing, don't you?" At first, I didn't understand what she meant, I laughed and said something like, "Well, you could always join us," but that only made things worse. She shook her head and replied, "It's not about the gingerbread house, Abigail. It's about how I'm always on the outside looking in." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I tried to explain that it wasn't intentional, that Dad and I just naturally fell into our routines. But Mom wasn't having it. She started listing off other times when she felt excluded, our camping trips, our secret breakfasts, even the way we'd sneak off at family gatherings to talk. "It's like you and your father have this whole world that I'm not part of," she said, her voice trembling. Dad stepped in, trying to calm things down, but that only seemed to make her angrier. "Of course you'd defend her," she snapped. "You've always put her first." The argument didn't last long, but it left a lingering tension in the air. After Mom stormed off to her room, Dad and I sat there in stunned silence, neither of us knowing quite what to say. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. I realized that while Dad and I had this incredible bond, it sometimes came at the expense of hers. It wasn't that she didn't want to connect with me. It was that she didn't always know how, and I hadn't made it easier for her. The next morning, I went to her and apologized. I told her that I never meant to make her feel excluded, and that I valued her just as much as Dad. It was a hard conversation, but it was also an important one. She admitted that she'd been holding on to those feelings for a long time, not wanting to ruin our relationship, but struggling with her own place in it. Since then, I've made more of an effort to include her, whether it's inviting her to join in on our traditions or creating new ones just for the two of us. I've tried to show her that she's just as important to me as Dad is. And while things aren't perfect, they never are in families, we've come a long way. That argument taught me something valuable. Even the strongest relationships need balance. It's easy to take someone's presence for granted, but love isn't just about the moments you share with one person. It's about making space for everyone who matters to you. As much as that argument with my mom stung, it became a turning point for all of us. Over time, our family found a better balance, one where we could all feel close without anyone feeling left out. But through it all, the bond I share with my dad has remained a cornerstone of my life, something I treasure more with each passing year. One night in particular stands out to me, a night that felt almost magical in how perfectly it captured the connection we've shared for as long as I can remember. It was late spring, just as the days were growing longer, but the nights still held that crisp, cool air. Dad and I had decided to go stargazing again, something we hadn't done in a while. This time, though, we wanted to make it special. We packed up a couple of blankets, a thermos of hot chocolate, and an old telescope he'd dusted off from the attic. We drove out to a secluded spot he remembered from years ago, a clearing on the edge of a wooded hill, far enough from the city lights that the stars seemed to multiply before your eyes. As we set up our little camp, the sky transitioned from deep blue to velvety black, and the first stars began to twinkle above us. For a while, we just sat there, sipping hot chocolate and letting the silence wash over us. There's something about being under a blanket of stars that makes you feel small in the best possible way, like all the worries of the world don't matter as much. Then Dad started pointing out constellations, just like he used to when I was a kid. "There's Orion," he said, his finger tracing the familiar pattern in the sky. "And over there, that's Cassiopeia." He told me the stories behind them, weaving together mythology and science with the same enthusiasm he always had. It felt like stepping back in time, like I was 10 years old again, hanging onto